Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. Now, before we begin, because in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining the information of underage users, therefore violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, also known as COPPA, they reached a settlement with the United States government, where they implemented new policy meant to dodge responsibilities and scapegoat creators, meaning I have to ensure everybody understands that this video is not meant for children. It's not marketed towards kids. It is not advertised towards kids. Doctor Who is a family show that kids can watch, but this video, as with all the videos on my channel, are looking at it from an adult perspective, and therefore we'll be discussing adult topics. So viewer discretion is advised. Now, it is the 8th of March 2021, and we are starting a look at the inaugural season of the Lost Stories range. Now, we've covered the Lost Stories range before on this channel. Each Doctor has had at least one Lost story, some multiple, and the 6th Doctor has the most. Currently clocking in at 12, with a 13th to come out in the future. It hasn't actually been given a release date yet. I think it's before the end of 2022. The 6th Doctor's Lost Stories are the most prolific. He has 8 more than the 2nd most Doctor, being the 5th, 4th, and 7th Doctors all being tied with 4, as well as the 1st Doctor's 4 stories. But the 6th Doctor is just the most prolific. And we're starting today with a look at The Nightmare Fair. Now, The Nightmare Fair is a story written by Graham Williams, the producer of Doctor Who from seasons 15 through 17 during the Tom Baker run. As producer, he was responsible for at least the ideas behind the Invasion of Time and City of Death, and supplied several scripts to the Doctor production office. The Nightmare Fair being the one that was storylines to the production office, The Nightmare Fair being one that was selected to be written as a script and aired on television in 1986 to start off the 23rd season. But of course, the 23rd season didn't happen the way that it planned. The show was put on an 18-month hiatus, meaning it would only come back near the end of 1986, and, well, it would come back in a very different format, and that entire season was scrapped. Williams, of that season, there were 6 stories planned, 5 of which were scripted, 1 had only reached the storyline stage. Of those 5 scripted stories, 4 of them have been adapted into audio dramas, this being the first. Now, Big Finish, of course, released their first season of Lost Stories as an 8-story season, with several other contenders that were made into script form, but never actually aired, or even really were rejected for other reasons, mostly budgetary. But The Nightmare Fair was always going to open season 23. It was actually going to be originally directed by Matthew Robinson, who had most recently directed Attack of the Cybermen and made advantage of location filming in Blackpool. Now, this version of The Nightmare Fair is an audio production by Big Finish Productions, with Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant reprising their roles, and a recast Celestial Toymaker. Yes, like season 22 before, season 23 was going to have quite a few returning villains. We will, of course, cover them as they come up in these various stories, but this one was to have a return of the Celestial Toymaker, and the Doctor and Peri arrive at Blackpool. This story, as well as the 2nd and 4th stories in the original season run, were eventually novelized by Target Books before both receiving adaptations by their original authors. Now, Graham Williams passed away before this adaptation, so this adaptation is technically by John Ainsworth. However, according to the behind-the-scenes material here, he didn't actually have to do much in terms of adapting it. It lent itself really well to audio. Some of the scenery had to be described in dialogue, but that's about it. This is, as far as we can have, the closest we are going to get to the story. And the first episode is good. It's actually really solid. Now, its big problem is actually the Doctor and Peri not really getting involved in the plot until the end of part 1, which very much feels like something that Eric Sayward would have essentially tried to get Williams to do. And knowing Graham Williams, who was part of the old school of writing Doctor Who, where the Doctor wouldn't become involved until the end of part 1 of a story, when stories were 4 episodes long, this actually makes a lot of sense. Now, whilst this significantly made the last story we looked at, Revelation of the Daleks' first episode, go down quite a bit, there are actually a couple of better things here. Mainly, Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant's performances are a lot more engaging. Yes, there's still the bickering, but again, we are at the it's fun bickering stage, and Big Finish Productions have made solid and brilliant efforts to actually ensure that, yes, the bickering is fun, not annoying. And really having them, the Doctor and Peri as just having fun playing, riding rides for a lot of this first episode is actually really good. It makes the companions have this amazing relationship in a way that we didn't really have beforehand. I should also say this is one of the Big Finish stories that is available on Spotify, so if this video takes your fancy, feel free to give it a look there. It's this first episode is a good start. We have intrigue of the TARDIS having fallen through Blackpool, and it's eventually revealed that the Toymaker has in fact been stuck on Earth for a very long time, and actually is the cause of the time distortion and interference, which is, again, a lot of fun it's just a lot of fun having, the entirety of this story be kind of just built around sort of the Toymaker and sort of who he is, what he means to be, the evil he decides to perhaps put on the Doctor. He traps the Doctor and wants the Doctor to play one final video game, so he can, as essentially the final, let's have the Doctor end. Let's have our ending of our rivalry and our feud, which is a lot of fun. Meanwhile, you have Peri up with Kevin, played by Matthew Noble, trying to find the Doctor and being attacked by, theme park rides, which is, again, a lot of fun. A lot of this lays into sort of the cheesy 80s fun nature, which is actually helped by Jamie Robertson's music and sound design. Robertson uses lots of synths, and there are a lot of things where you have, Robertson's sort of very distinctive score. He did the score for bits of the Key to Time arc. He's done a lot of stuff that we've done before, and him scoring this takes a page right out of the 1980s, which is good. It makes it really, really feel like you're capturing the era, and that's something that this release is meant to do. It's meant to capture as if this was just a soundtrack of a Doctor Who episode. And as a soundtrack, it's a lot of fun. Also, the Toymaker has this servant called Stefan, who is a bit weird, perhaps not one aspect of the story that perhaps hasn't aged well. He's kind of sort of this submissive, and he's kind of coded as a gay lover, which is a little weird for something like the Celestial Toymaker, but there's still a lot of fun, with the character and with a lot of what everything sort of does. So, overall, part one of the Nightmare Fair takes a while to get going, but David Bailey and Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant really are the standouts here, bringing just this story that people never expected to see again to life in such a fascinating way, where you really can get into sort of the ideas and play around with who who the Doctor is, what it and really it's just a good fun writing. So I'm gonna have to give part one of the Nightmare Fair a 7 out of 10. All right, it's the 9th of March 2021. I just finished listening to part 2 of the Nightmare Fair, the concluding episode, which in a lot of ways is even better than the first. The Nightmare Fair is a very very different sort of story, because you have the Celestial Toymaker as the character that he is, as just this very evil and interesting sort of thing, where you get this idea that he is trying to take over the world, and it's kind of played for an absurdity, in a very, very good way. I love sort of the absurdity that this entire story just sort of brings to, it just brings in general. There's, just sort of the absurd nature of the characters basically doing a bunch just a bunch of different things. One thing I think Graham Williams really understands is the characterization of Peri. Once again, I'm crediting Williams because Ainsworth apparently didn't change much from the actual script. It was just a very standard adaptation of getting the script from the what we know as the version that was eventually novelized into a different version, because this one has Kevin Kevin is this is captured by the Toymaker and replaced with one of his androids, and Peri doesn't notice immediately, but she notices it when he doesn't seem to actually be in pain, and she's with him long enough to realize he's not in pain, which I think is definitely interesting, because I think some cliches would have a character, like especially nowadays, would just have a character notice it without actually building to the, oh right, this is still this is still the character having to notice something possibly different about just a character that they're interacting with. It's very much a sort of idea where everything that everything that Williams does is there. I don't know if I like the whole taking over the world plot, because it does seem just a little out of the blue. Out of the blue enough where you're asking, okay, is this really the plot where we need to be going for? Um, it's very much a uh, it's um, it's very much the um, um, it's very much sort of the lost opener to a season. It feels like this is the start of something, and I think it's really really good. And there's something really interesting the way the Doctor is characterized is that we are we are at um, 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 we are at we are at a point, obviously, where in history where Colin Baker is doing it differently, but playing the role differently, but he's still kind of standoffish to people who aren't like close to Peri. He's really standoffish to Kevin, and some listeners may find that jarring, but I think it actually works. Um, a lot of it's partially because he's just like, in general, distracted with trying to beat the Toymaker, and figure out, okay, here's how I'm gonna beat the Toymaker, even if and eventually he does, and he gets out of the cell, and eventually we do get to see the image of the Doctor playing a video game to save his life, which is just a cool idea. Um, I think for the very uh, very uh, one of those very different sort of ideas where the story plays plays um, plays around um, with this with this with just who the Toymaker is. And again, a lot of it's just a lot of fun imagery. Like, the last image is actually Peri and the Doctor going off to have a good day at Blackpool. It's it almost feels out of place, though it's something in the original script. Like, if Eric Sayward was script editing this, I have a feeling he wouldn't have allowed that. But I think it's actually really nice, and having a happy ending, especially as this comes right after, like, this takes place right after Revelation of the Daleks, which ended with the Doctor and Peri being unhappy together as on Necros, where everything was falling apart. Having that happy ending as a juxtaposition works really well to bring both characters together and bring the story to a level where you can see the characters having fun, enjoying themselves. This is no longer the at all sort of sadness that this story is known for. It's the Doctor and Peri having a good time, playing their characters, and I I love seeing that as just as something that the story can be, and something that the story can do. Because this isn't your typical Doctor Who adventure. It's a story that never was made on television. It's something completely new. It's the Doctor and Peri, really, as you haven't seen them before. And I love it. Because the Doctor and Peri as characters are just so enjoyable together, where Nicola Bryant and Colin Baker play off each other beautifully. They're clearly good friends, just in a situation, having an adventure together. And you end the story just by seeing just by seeing what they can, what their sort of relationship means, who they are. It's really fun. I definitely enjoy it. It's Colin Baker as the Doctor is always a blast, and Nicola Bryant is always a blast. And some people don't like this story. Some people say it gets a little dark, but I think it works really, really well. So overall, I'm going to have to give Part 2 of The Nightmare Fair an 8 out of 10, because it's not perfect, but it is a great romp. That being said, we add up the scores and average them out to give The Nightmare Fair a final score of 7.5 out of 10. Now, actually, that's kind of an interesting number, because this was meant to start season 23, and really, score-wise, it's only lagging behind 3 stories from the televised season 22, showing that this story is definitely a better start to a season than Attack of the Cybermen was, and it just shows that this season, that at least the start of season 23, would have been good. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. As always, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And click the little bell icon so you never miss an upload. And next time, we're going to continue the Lost Stories, but we're actually going to be looking at a Lost Story only released in 2019. Now, after the Nightmare Fair, there would Fiona Cumming, director of stories such as Enlightenment and Castrovalva, was tapped to direct the second story. Now, when the first season of Lost Stories came out in 2009, their second release was actually the 4th story of the original season. The second story only was adapted in 2019, when Wally K. Daly decided to finally lower his prices and adapt The Ultimate Evil.